3 years had passed since the human delegation walked away from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Elder Vorthak floated alone in his private chamber, reviewing intelligence reports that painted a picture he had never imagined possible. The human Commonwealth now encompassed 47 star systems and included 23 different species. What had begun as humanity's moral protest had evolved into the most rapidly growing political entity in galactic history. More troubling for the Council, it was also becoming the most prosperous. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Elder Vorthak accepted the connection, and the holographic image of Ambassador Threll appeared in his chamber. The Hexapod Collective had become one of the Council's few remaining reliable allies, though even their loyalty was showing signs of strain. Elder Vorthak, Threll began, his harmonic patterns indicating careful diplomacy. I have received the quarterly trade reports you requested. The situation continues to deteriorate. Vorthak's bioluminescence dimmed to acknowledge the bad news. How severe is the decline? Galactic trade volumes are down 38% from pre-withdrawal levels. The alternative trade routes have proven inefficient and expensive. Many commercial entities are choosing to establish operations in Commonwealth space, rather than deal with Council bureaucracy. The ethereal's patterns shifted to deep purples, indicating distress. And the other reports? Threll's mechanical voice carried subtle notes of reluctance. The Andromedan refugees successfully completed their resettlement in Commonwealth space. The human Commonwealth provided them with 3 habitable worlds, full citizenship rights, and integration support. The refugees are reporting higher satisfaction levels than any previous resettlement program in galactic history. Vorthak's light dimmed further. The Andromedan refugees had been displaced by a Council-approved mining operation 6 months ago. The Council had offered them temporary housing on overcrowded space stations, while searching for alternative worlds. The human Commonwealth had simply given them permanent homes. There is more, Threll continued. The Commonwealth has announced completion of their new interspecies university on New Geneva. It will offer advanced education to any being in the galaxy, regardless of species or political affiliation. Free education, Vorthak said with resignation. Of course it is. Yes. Additionally, they have completed construction of the largest medical research facility ever built. They are sharing all medical advances freely with any species that requests them. Elder Vorthak's patterns cycled through colors indicating deep frustration. Everything the human Commonwealth did seemed designed to highlight the Council's failures. Where the Council imposed bureaucracy, the Commonwealth offered efficiency. Where the Council demanded compliance, the Commonwealth provided choices. Where the Council enforced order through power, the Commonwealth maintained stability through cooperation. What of the military situation? Vorthak asked. Threll's harmonic patterns shifted to indicate reluctant admiration. The Commonwealth Defense Force is remarkably effective despite its size. They have successfully deterred 3 separate piracy campaigns, defended 2 non-aligned worlds from aggressive expansion attempts, and provided disaster relief to 7 different systems. All without Council authorization. All in response to direct requests for assistance from local governments. Vorthak found himself thinking of War Commander Zelk, whose aggressive rhetoric had only intensified over the past 3 years. The Korthak military leader had been demanding action against the human Commonwealth since their 2nd year of independence, claiming they represented a threat to galactic order. And what of Zelk's proposed military action against Commonwealth shipping? Threll's patterns indicated careful consideration. Our analysis suggests it would be catastrophically counterproductive. The Commonwealth maintains defensive alliances with 18 non-Council species. Military action against Commonwealth vessels would likely trigger a broader conflict that the Council cannot win. The truth that no one wanted to speak aloud was becoming impossible to ignore. The human Commonwealth had become more popular, more prosperous, and more powerful than the Galactic Council itself. A new communication alert interrupted their conversation. This time, the incoming message was urgent, marked with high-priority indicators from multiple Council intelligence services. Elder Vorthak accepted the connection, and Admiral Kresh's image appeared alongside Threll's hologram. The Korthak military commander looked haggard, his usual aggressive confidence replaced by something approaching despair. Elder Vorthak, I am reporting from the Sigma Draconis system. We have a situation that requires immediate council attention. What kind of situation, Admiral? The collective mind of Sigma Draconis has requested Commonwealth intervention to prevent ecological collapse of their homeworld. Vorthak's bioluminescence flashed through rapid patterns, indicating shock and alarm. The collective mind was one of the oldest council members, a hive species that had been part of galactic civilization since before the ethereals achieved spaceflight. But the Sigma Draconis system is council territory, Vorthak protested. The collective mind cannot simply request outside intervention. Admiral Kresh's mandibles clicked with agitation. Elder, the situation is complicated. The ecological crisis was caused by a council-approved industrial project that ignored environmental impact assessments. The collective mind requested council assistance 8 months ago. The council response was insufficient. Threll's harmonic patterns indicated understanding. The council offered a committee to study the problem and potential legislation to address future similar issues. Correct. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth offered immediate deployment of their Environmental Restoration Corps. They arrived in the system 6 days ago and have already begun emergency stabilization procedures. Elder Vorthak felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Genuine fear. The collective mind is still a council member. They cannot accept Commonwealth assistance without council approval. End quote. They have formally withdrawn from the council, Admiral Kresh replied quietly. As of this morning, they are the 24th species to join the human Commonwealth. The implications hit Vorthak like a physical blow. The collective mind controlled 7 star systems and was one of the Council's major industrial producers. Their departure would create cascading economic and political effects throughout Council space. But surely we can negotiate, Vorthak began desperately. We can offer improved environmental protection standards, increased funding for ecological restoration. Threll's patterns shifted to colors indicating uncomfortable truth. Elder, the collective mind's official statement cited fundamental philosophical differences with council priorities. They specifically mentioned that the Commonwealth offers government that serves its people rather than people who serve their government. Admiral Kresh's image flickered as his communication array struggled with long-range transmission. There is more, Elder. Intelligence reports suggest that 8 other council member species are actively negotiating with the Commonwealth for potential membership. Vorthak's bioluminescence had faded to barely perceptible levels. Which species? The aquatic Brel, the crystalline Synthari, 3 of the minor hive clusters, the Peaceful Traders Guild, and the Hexapod Collective. Elder Vorthak turned to look at Threll's holographic image, with something approaching betrayal. Ambassador, is this accurate? Threll's harmonic patterns carried notes of regret but also determination. Elder Vorthak. My government has been in preliminary discussions with Commonwealth representatives. We have not made any commitments, but we are exploring options. After 8,000 years of council membership, the Hexapod Collective would abandon galactic civilization? Elder, Threll replied gently. We are not abandoning galactic civilization. We are choosing a different version of it. Admiral Kresh's voice cut through the growing tension. Elder Vorthak. War Commander Zelk has requested permission to begin military action against Commonwealth expansion. He believes that a show of force will convince wavering species to remain loyal to the Council. Vorthak's patterns shifted through rapid color changes as he considered the implications. Military action against the Commonwealth would likely trigger the conflict that everyone knew the Council could not win. But allowing Commonwealth expansion to continue would mean the gradual dissolution of the galactic order that had existed for millennia. What does your analysis suggest, Admiral? Kresh's mandibles clicked slowly, indicating deep reluctance. Military action would be suicide, Elder. The Commonwealth Defense Force has technological advantages we cannot match, alliance networks we cannot break, and popular support we cannot counter. More importantly, they would be fighting a defensive war to protect their member species, while we would be fighting an aggressive war to maintain political control. Threll's harmonic patterns indicated careful thought. Elder Vorthak. Perhaps there is a third option. What option? Negotiation. Not for Commonwealth submission to Council authority, but for coexistence between two different approaches to galactic civilization. Elder Vorthak was quiet for long minutes, his bioluminescence cycling through colors that indicated deep contemplation. Finally, he spoke. Schedule a diplomatic meeting with Commonwealth representatives. Admiral Kresh's shock was evident in his rapid mandible clicking. Elder, War Commander Zelk will consider this a betrayal of Council sovereignty. War Commander Zelk's aggressive rhetoric has contributed significantly to our current situation. Vorthak replied with uncharacteristic firmness. It is time to try a different approach. Olo. 3 weeks later, Elder Vorthak found himself in a conference room aboard the neutral space station Deep Unity, waiting for the arrival of the human Commonwealth delegation. The irony was not lost on him. The station had been built by Joint Human Council cooperation 40 years earlier as a symbol of galactic unity. The door opened, and Ambassador Sarah Chen entered the room, followed by representatives from 6 different Commonwealth species. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago, carrying herself with the quiet dignity that had made human diplomats legendary. Elder Vorthak, she said simply, taking a seat across from him at the conference table. Ambassador Chen, I confess, I did not expect to see you again under these circumstances. Sarah's expression remained neutral, but there was something in her eyes that might have been sadness. Circumstances have a way of evolving beyond anyone's expectations. Indeed they do. Vorthak's patterns shifted to colors indicating careful diplomacy. The Council has asked me to explore the possibility of accommodation between our two forms of government. What kind of accommodation? Mutual recognition of sovereignty, establishment of formal diplomatic relations, perhaps even trade agreements and cooperation on matters of mutual interest. Sarah Chen was quiet for several moments, and Vorthak found himself remembering the human capacity for uncomfortable questions that cut to the heart of complex issues. Elder Vorthak, she finally said, may I ask what has changed in the Council's perspective? The question was exactly what he had been expecting and dreading. The Council has come to recognize that the Commonwealth represents a legitimate alternative approach to galactic civilization. That is not what I asked. Of course it wasn't. Humans never accepted diplomatic non-answers when direct truth was available. The Council has realized that the Commonwealth model is more successful than our own, Vorthak admitted. Your member species are more prosperous, more satisfied, and more willing to contribute to collective goals than ours. Your government is more efficient, more responsive, and more adaptable than ours. Your society is more stable, more innovative, and more attractive to other species than ours. Sarah nodded slowly. And what does the Council propose to do about that realization? Learn from it. Adapt our own systems to incorporate Commonwealth approaches. Perhaps even establish formal cooperation agreements. The Commonwealth delegation exchanged glances, and Vorthak could see complex communications passing between species that had learned to work together, despite their vast differences. Elder Vorthak, said the peaceful miners' representative. 3 years ago, our people were facing forced displacement from our homeworld because the Council decided our mining resources were more valuable than our lives. The Commonwealth did not just save us. They gave us a voice in our own future. The Aquatic Brel representative added their own perspective. The Council offered us bureaucracy and committees when our colony worlds faced environmental crisis. The Commonwealth offered immediate action and long-term solutions. Sarah Chen leaned forward slightly. Elder, the differences between our governments are not technical or administrative. They are philosophical. The Council governs through authority and law. The Commonwealth governs through consent and cooperation. But surely accommodation is possible, Vorthak insisted. Both systems can coexist, can learn from each other. They can coexist, Sarah agreed. But they cannot merge without one fundamentally changing its nature. Elder Vorthak's patterns cycled through colors indicating deep thought. And the Commonwealth will not change its nature? Would you ask us to abandon the principles that made our success possible? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with 3 years of accumulated consequences. Vorthak found himself thinking of all the species that had left the Council, all the trade relationships that had shifted to Commonwealth space, all the refugees who had found homes in Commonwealth worlds. No, he said finally. I suppose I would not. Sarah Chen's expression softened slightly. Elder Vorthak. The Commonwealth does not seek conflict with the Council. We are willing to establish formal diplomatic relations, negotiate trade agreements, even cooperate on scientific research and humanitarian missions. But we will not compromise our fundamental commitment to government that serves its people rather than ruling over them. And if other Council species choose to join the Commonwealth, they will be welcomed if they share our values and are willing to contribute to our collective success. Elder Vorthak's bioluminescence dimmed as he contemplated a future where the Galactic Council became a secondary power in its own region of space. You realize this will likely result in the gradual dissolution of the Council? That depends entirely on whether the Council chooses to adapt or to resist change. For the first time in centuries, Elder Vorthak found himself laughing. A complex pattern of bioluminescent flashes that conveyed rueful appreciation for irony. You are still asking uncomfortable questions that force us to examine our fundamental assumptions. It's what humans do. Sarah replied with a slight smile. We ask questions like, what if there was a better way? The negotiations continued for 6 days, ultimately resulting in formal diplomatic recognition between the Galactic Council and the Human Commonwealth. Trade agreements were established, joint research projects were approved, and cooperation protocols were implemented for humanitarian emergencies. But the real outcome of the negotiations was the quiet acknowledgement that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Council's 8,000-year monopoly on galactic civilization had ended, replaced by a competitive marketplace of ideas where different approaches to government could coexist and be judged by their results. Over the following years, the Commonwealth continued to grow, while the Council gradually reformed its own systems to compete for the loyalty of member species. Some improvements were successful. Others came too late to prevent further departures. But the most significant change was philosophical. Never again would galactic civilization assume that authority was sufficient to justify power, or that tradition was sufficient to justify policy. The humans had walked away from the Council not to destroy it, but to prove that something better was possible. And in proving that principle, they had changed the galaxy forever.